Hey everybody, welcome back to another Vortex Gallery TO interview. I am here with Brett, who is going to be helping bringing us Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme versus Maxiboost on to EVO this year with Vortex Gallery. Brett, it is so good to be here and to talk about this long-running game with EVO. Quite a presence, quite a history. Lots to talk about here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, no, Gundam is indeed a long-running game here at Evo, and I'm just excited to be running another year. It's going to be a good one, I think. So looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, I guess before we talk about the game, I guess we should talk a little bit about you. Just who are you? I mean, you've been doing this. You've been doing this for a while. I think if
Yeah,
anyone's
yeah,
watched, I think if anyone's watched a Gundam production, it's either had your hand in it or at least I know definitely Gundam at Evo.
yeah.
So I mean, talk to me. Like, what have you been doing this whole time playing this little game?
Yeah. I mean, Gundam's a pretty awesome game. It's very popular in Japan, but it is not so popular in the West. So it's a bit of a niche game. So I've just been running the side tournaments at Evo since the first console version. Uh, I guess I was like missed a year or two because I was not in America, but for the most part, we've been running it every year at Evo. So it is maybe like the longest history of being a side game at Evo without any interruption, something like that. I would garner to say.
Okay. And I guess that's been pretty. That growth that you mentioned is pretty fruitful, I
Yeah,
think, because we've now started to
yeah,
see this game show up in, Evo under PlayStation. We've started to see these
yes,
PlayStation
yeah.
events that have been leading up to Evo that have included Gundam, right? So a lot of people,
Mhm.
I think, who are playing Mbon competitively are really looking forward to this one. They see it as like a big trail up to
Yes,
this event.
yes,
Um,
yes.
why don't you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, you know,
Hmm.
fighting games have majors that they kind of look forward to. Uh,
Right.
it could be a pro tour final. It could be a major that is home to a
Mm-hmm.
particular center of the community. But for Gundam, I
Mm-hmm.
guess with the duly noted Climax of Night tournaments that you are also involved with over there,
Yeah.
Evo is I guess from a distance very important for the competitive scene of the game. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing is timing. The current version that we're on, Maxiboost on, released basically right after COVID. So there was also Climax, but this is definitely the first Evo that we've had physically since the game came out. And for
Okay,
people who are kind of unfamiliar, you might remember this kind of thing if you're playing an Arc System Works game. But the kind of the life cycle of the versions that Gundam has is such that it's always kind of a version or two behind what the current arcade version is. So every time a new version does come out, it's actually like a pretty big deal. We're always hoping to get new stuff and stuff like that. And yeah, this version is a very refined version of like the extremely popular prior version. So of the versions that we're on, I think this one is definitely one that a lot of people really like. And the release on console, I think, was really huge. So if you just look in terms of numbers, there's a lot of people, especially a lot of new people, coming into this game because the prior version before Maxi Boost on was Gundam Versus, which is this whole other can of worms, which is kind of like a weird side version
sure.
that was console only. So Maxi Boost on is definitely the version that's kind of bringing everyone together. You got all this new blood coming from a game that some people just didn't even play, and then you have people coming all the way from Full Boost, which was the previous arcade console port proper, and then that game
Right.
came out in like 2012 or 2013, something like that. And Bond's really a big deal. Yeah, it's a game that's got the largest size community wise that we've ever seen, with an active online scene, more so than we've ever had before, with a timing such that everyone is really hungry to prove themselves, from the online sphere to get that local offline tournament play. And it's going to be the first Evo, so you're cementing who's really the best.
Yeah. Okay. So, I do want to get your take on the competition that you expect to
Mhm,
see and who's been up and coming and who's
mhm,
realistically going to be there. What do you think that looks like?
mhm,
But first,
mhm.
we can have this conversation all day. But maybe people are not too familiar with the gameplay and
Yeah.
what it takes to organize this kind of thing, because I think that's interesting, right? Like a unique
Yeah, it
challenge.
is.
So
Yeah.
tell me about it. Like, what's the format that people can expect?
Mhm.
Like, what are some of the things that you have to do to make sure it runs well?
Yeah, so Gundam Extreme versus Series, sorry, God, it is a 2-on-2 game. So it's a game where you team up with a partner, and each person pilots like a mobile suit or some kind of mech from the Gundam universe, and you fight against the opponent's team. If you've ever played Dissidia, it's very close to Dissidia NT. There's not really much other games like it, actually. And I think that's one of the most attractive parts of it. So it's like you're going to this, if you're trying to just take a peek at the game, it's going to look very different than like anything else. I suppose it might look like an arena fighter, sort of, and it's classified maybe in that sense because it is like a, like over the shoulder POV kind of game where you're moving around. So, it definitely doesn't really look like a fighting game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the genre it is a 2-on-2 game. So it's a lot about strategy, and it's got a lot of overlap in the kind of like a higher level thought process with fighting games, but in the minutia, it's definitely got its own skill set, which is really interesting. It's got a lot of like teamwork stuff, and it's got like it has kind of like roles and comps sort of.
Yeah.
And then so from a logistical standpoint, it is definitely a pretty challenging game to stream/run, since it has local support now with this version, but it's still only one player per console for that mode. You can't really like have all 4 people on one PS4. It's not like, I don't know, Mario Strikers or something, or it's not some other game where you can just kind of get everyone on one PS4. So the game is a 2-on-2 game, so that means if you want to run the game for a single setup, you need 4 PS4s and 4 monitors. And the game has a online only spectate mode, which is usually not really used for offline tournaments. So if you want to kind of stream the game at an offline event for having 4 subs, you either want 4 capture cards that you then are gonna move through or whatever, or you can kind of buy like an HDMI flipper and like flip through them. Those are usually the 2 options. So it definitely comes with its own challenges. It's definitely not a game if you've never heard of before and you're like, oh, I want to stream it. You're gonna have to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think if you've never watched a Gundam stream, I certainly have. They're kind of a sight to behold, and you see the streamer just constantly bouncing through it. Reminds me a lot of like FPS spectator, like dedicated people, but with like a lot more hardware involved. Yeah, a lot more suppressing buttons. Okay, yeah, I totally see that. I think that's interesting insight for anyone who wants to, see what big complicated streaming setups can look like. Okay, so that's great. So you're gonna be putting on this whole show. What do you think about the players? So you mentioned this is the one that's bringing everyone together. This is the big console release. The NetPlay era is now bringing new people in, and old people are checking out the version. So like, I guess from here to now, like, who do you think's coming? What do you think the level of play is going to be like? What's something that you can tell me about it?
So I don't think I'm going to be the only one saying this, but I think a big thing I'm thinking about is the skill level is definitely on average a lot higher than it has been is going to be, I think, in my opinion, than in previous years competition wise, because there's just a more active online community than ever before.
Yeah.
And I'm sure games that, for example, had GGPO and people started now playing with a rollback netcode release, those kind of games also are going to probably have another thing where I think your average Joe is just going to be a lot stronger than you used to if you're going into it trying to be lazy about it. So I think competition wise, I think the level is going to be higher than it's ever been, and that on top of, like I mentioned before, it's like the first offline Evo for Ambon, so it kind of got an unclaimed crown right now. As far as who, like I don't want to name like too many people because I don't want them to just not show up. I'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's coming, and then you're just not there. But I think that from the other offline things we've had, I have a feeling we're gonna see a lot of the people who showed up for that. So, for example, the team that won at Climax, the Breaker and Arway, I wouldn't be surprised to see them there. I'm pretty sure at least I can name that. I'm pretty sure I saw Breaker register for Evo. But it is also it's in Vegas, so the California scene is more likely to kind of be there because and the Vegas scene. I don't really know much about Gundam Vegas, but
Yeah.
but the West Coast at least, will probably be showing up there because it's close by. It's either a cheaper plane flight, or it's a drive away. So. And then from outside from Midwest and East Coast, I noticed there were a lot of Midwest players showing up to a lot of the offline things. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I was at both Frosty and Combo Breaker.
Yeah.
But it seems like the people who have been traveling are probably going to be and play a lot of Gundam are going to be at Evo. And so I'm looking forward to that a lot.
I guess a question that I don't know how many people can answer about this is you mentioned that the game is behind a couple arcade versions in regards to the arcade, and we can talk about that. That's kind of a thing with a lot of different games, but specifically like competition for Mbon internationally, like do you guys have people from the I guess Japanese scene or other Asian territories? Like, do you guys intersect with them at all ever? Is that something that happens?
I definitely feel like we're maybe behind compared to some games in terms of interacting with the other scenes. This year, I don't know how much of an international scene we're going to be seeing because times are tough, and Evo is actually a pretty difficult timing for the average Japanese person to move over due to the way it intersects with their holidays.
Yeah.
In the past, though, I think the most infamous one is that we often have Kana Ueda, who's like Tosaka Rin or Rachel Alucard's voice actor. She usually visits Evo and plays Gundam. I don't even know if she actually enters like other games other than Gundam, but she usually does come in attendance. Last year, or God, man, okay, time Vortex. The last offline Evo, which is 2019 now. Man, 2019, I believe it was. That was the last Gundam Versus year, and we actually had two like really huge YouTubers from the Japanese like Gundam scene actually. So that was really cool.
Okay.
So like we've had every year, I would say about every year we have, couple teams entering. There are very rarely people coming only for Gundam. But there are the occasional. So like we've had Riri, who's like a really strong Gundam player, who's friends with Kanoeda, who's been a couple times, as well as the YouTubers I mentioned before. And we also just kind of get people who are really multi-talented and include Gundam. So like Zenith, who plays like everything. There's like Red Melon and some other people from his sphere. So things like that. So we get some crossover. And then, some of us kind of communicate with the Japanese scene, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on that. I think that's something that I myself have gotten into Gundam recently.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people have, as they kind of see the game show up everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to kind of ask that point, because a lot of other TOs that I've talked to, they're kind of thinking about that. Oh, the players are potentially going to show up, maybe less. So Rizwan had a fair bit to say about that in regards to Street Fighter. So yeah, super appreciate that. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts to say about Gundam at Vortex Gallery this year.
It's just a really special game. It's we kind of use Evo as a really large part of pushing the game forward. I mean, obviously I'll say that because I've been running it every year, but like it's always a step to just try and build the game up, and that's because it's pretty hard to raise up at the local level or even at the majors. But the people who play it know this game is a really, really good game. It's definitely up there in terms of deserving more attention, and we know that because it's like one of the most popular games at arcades period in Japan.
Yep.
So I don't know a bigger dichotomy, right, as far as games that we see like at Evo that have this huge divide from potential. So it definitely has the highest potential of the games, looking at it by like stuff like that. So yeah, like a lot of things just kind of coming together this year, making me super excited for it. So hopefully people tune in for it, or come by if they can. Definitely, it's a crazy game, and it's definitely gonna be an experience that's very different from all the other games you're gonna.
Okay, guys, remember, registration is open at the time of recording for Mbon at Vortex Gallery this year. That's going to be start.gg/Vortex Gallery, vortexgallery.moe for all the information related to this event. We're going to be back very soon with more interviews. Thank you, guys. See you all next time.